You are listening to the Innovating Cannabis Podcast, where you will meet entrepreneurs, cultivators, scientists, doctors, and inventors in the cannabis industry.
I'm your host, Pam Schmiel. In addition to hosting and producing this show, I'm a freelance writer and editor for the Cannabis Industry Journal. As the cannabis industry evolves, so does the technology shaping its future. Innovations from outside sectors are being adapted and refined to meet the unique challenges of cannabis production. One of the newest breakthroughs is X-ray technology for microbial remediation. Unlike chemical or fog-based methods which interact with terpene and cannabinoid compounds and potentially degrading flavor and aroma, X-ray penetrates the whole flower while leaving cannabinoids and terpenes untouched. Today we're joined by Jeff Adams, founder of XRPure, and Joe Bancheri, the company's head of business development. They walk us through how XRPure's X-ray remediation technology works and why it could represent the next generation of clean, high-quality cannabis. Let's welcome Jeff and Joe to the show.
Let's just start out with, what is XRPure, and then what are both of your positions at the company and responsibilities, just to set that stage.
Sure, I'll get into that. So XRPure makes an X-ray based decontamination system for cannabis flower. And we come from a long background of X-ray, about 75 years of experience in our company of making X-ray products and X-ray machines. And we've brought that technology from different industries and now into the cannabis space. My name, Jeff Adams. I'm the managing director and the founder of the company. And I'll let Joe introduce himself in a minute, but we're a subsidiary of, like I said, a larger company called Varex Imaging. Varex Imaging is really considered the largest independent manufacturer of X-ray tubes and other X-ray products in the world.
Oh, okay. Wow, interesting. Can't wait to hear about that. And
Joe,
Joe,
do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Joseph Bancheri, cannabis aficionado. I'm I've been in the cannabis world for 20 years. I'm a advocate for cannabis and plant medicine. I believe in keeping the integrity of the plant, and with the data and information I've learned about with X-ray technology, I believe that truly keeps the integrity of the plant. I've got 20 plus years of technology experience as well. So it's just a great combo, perfect scenario for me to be in this space.
So I know that there's different, I honestly, it's a subject I don't know, very in depth, but I figure that's what we'll all learn today, because I feel like a lot of people don't understand, this part of the business. So can you explain, what are the typical type of decontamination methods or technologies out there? And then X-ray, is that like a new part of decontamination that's coming in? I know you said that it's used in other industries. How is it used in agriculture, or?
Sure.
Yeah, like more about
Sure.
like what do we have now? Where what have we been using, and what are you introducing? And is it really new?
Yes, I can go through all of that. Let me start broad and come down to the cannabis space.
Okay.
So forever, there's been ways to kill microbes. Started with pasteurization and all of that, right? So heat is the most common way to try to kill microbes or contaminants in food or other things like that. Heat doesn't work very well for cannabis because you change the properties of cannabis if you treat it with heat. And so other techniques have been developed. There's ozone treatment. And so ozone is a gas that is a strong oxidizer and basically oxidizes microbes that are on the surface of the plant. We believe that one of the drawbacks of ozone is that cannabis flowers are very tight, and so microbes that get down inside the cannabis flower are hard to be treated with a surface treatment. Other kinds of surface treatment would be like UV light, things like that, that can't get all the way through the flower. So X-ray or irradiation has been used for many, many years. It started high usage in the 1950s, using gamma radiation to treat food. And I think you would be surprised at how much food that you eat every day and I eat every day has been treated with gamma radiation. So one of the very common things that way is things like spices or food ingredients, powdered food ingredients. Many of them get treated with gamma radiation to decontaminate them, to kill microbes in those, and make sure that the food is safe. E-beam is another technology. It's electron beam, it's called, which works very similarly and is used in food and other things. One of the common examples for E-beam would be treating fresh produce coming in. So we're involved in, our larger company is involved in systems that are placed at the border, say in Texas, and a truckload of fruit comes across the border from Mexico. The first place it goes is into one of these decontamination facilities, and they run it through an electron beam machine, and it kills all the pests that are on there, and it kills microbes to make the shelf life of the apples or oranges or whatever you're bringing across, increases the shelf life. And so these are very common things done all throughout the food industry, multi-billion-dollar industry. So many of those techniques, it was recognized as cannabis started to become illegal, that many of those techniques could be effective at cannabis. And I don't want to go in depth into the pros and cons of each of them, but there are some drawbacks of different techniques. We talked already about surface treatments versus treatments that can penetrate all the way through. We talked about heat probably not being a good solution for cannabis. And so this is where X-ray really has found its niche. And that's because X-ray treatment of cannabis, you're really, in simple words, saying you're killing the bad stuff and leaving all the good stuff. In other words, we don't affect the terpenes, the THC content, the nose, the appearance, the smell, all of that is unaffected by X-ray treatment. But on the other hand, X-ray is very effective at killing microbes, reducing that microbial load, so that somebody who's growing cannabis, they have to get it tested, right? Their microbial load has to be below a certain point. So allow them to test it and pass their regulations so that they can sell their product. It works great at doing that, and it really has little to no effect otherwise on the flower.
Do you have any data on after you have used your machine on if it alters the composition in any way? I'm not, in any, this is just talk, not with your equipment, but just, people are trying to find all these different preservation technologies right now, like nitrogen washing and, different things. And it's the question is any of this stuff altering, the plant in any way?
Pre and post data showing water content, terpenes, THC percentages showing like there's very little to no effect on that. So that's basically what I saw and what helps me, support this technology. So
Yeah, because I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, as far I know Jeff won't go into it, but one of the saddest days of my life was opening up a big bag of weed and smelling nothing because it was treated with ozone. And on top of that, it didn't look great either. So definitely not a fan of that technology. If it's like if you're a chef and you make an amazing meal and then someone just blands it out, it's not, it does no justice to the plant.
So that's amazing that it really doesn't degrade the terpenes. I mean, I feel like it's hard to degrade cannabinoids, because I know there's been stability tests done, down into retail and things like that, and it's not much degradation, but it's the terpenes and the low concentration molecules that everybody's kind of really talking about now also, that's coming to light now in addition to the terpenes, and they are so volatile. Is there, but I know also, listen, if it's dirty weed and it has to get cleaned up, and even if, people typically do add back this stuff back in, and maybe that will be standard for us.
I have a couple of comments on that. One is you used a very good word there, volatile. Terpenes are a volatile compound. That's why the cannabis has the smell and the taste that it does, right? You're smelling and tasting those terpenes. So yes, they're coming off the plant all the time. And of course, time has a big factor there. The longer it sits around, the lower those terpene levels are going to be. So what we're trying to say is X-ray treatment doesn't change that, doesn't add to or take away from that, right? Those natural terpene losses are just happening, and we don't affect that one way or another with the X-ray treatment.
And I guess another good point that you're making is how it penetrates into the trichome to, I mean, did you say that, like, there's really no other treatment that really kind of goes right into that
Yeah.
core? Is
Uh,
that pretty much?
X-ray and gamma treatment both will penetrate all the way through. Just like an X-ray is going to pass all the way through your arm when you go get your arm X-rayed for a broken bone or something, X-ray goes easily through cannabis flower, and so treats every part of the volume of it.
So I guess, yeah, let's just talk about some case studies and where you are in the industry or who you're working with. How long has it been on the marketplace?
Sure. We started studying this about 3.5 years ago as part of our X-ray, parent company. We started hearing about cannabis treatment and looking at what technologies we had available at our disposal, and figured out pretty quickly that we could bring a solution to the market that was going to be very effective and different than that. So we started all of that about 3.5 years ago. Our first machine went on the market just over 2.5 years ago. And at first in just kind of a trial basis, just to see how it would work. We've spent probably the first 6 months doing improvements to the usability of the machine and all of that. And so then commercially available for just over 2 years now.
And do you think would be accepted in the medical market? I'm thinking Europe, we're a little far behind on that, and GMP and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so X-ray technology has no problem conforming with GMP requirements. All of that is fine. I know Germany, for example, requires a little bit of extra paperwork and maybe a little bit of extra cost for somebody to import flower into the country that has been X-rayed. We're not exactly sure why they do that, but you actually have to register each specific strain that you want to import if it's been X-rayed beforehand. We're part of industry groups and others that are trying to change that. That's just the way that they set up their laws. But as far as being compliant, with rules and regulations and all of that, X-ray is fully compliant with everything that they require, including the maximum microbial levels that are allowed in Europe.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was also going to add, as far as medical, though, medical patients would probably prefer to have clean cannabis, especially with autoimmune issues, stuff like that. So I think that's where we're going to trend towards, that they're going to look for cannabis that has been treated. I have looked on some of the EU cannabis sites, and it shows what cannabis has been treated, what has not been treated, stuff like that. So
there is those people who say there should be no remediation. I won't do it no matter what. We're not doing that. But of course, we know that there's a lot of dirty weed out there, so it has to be done. But what would you say? I guess really it's no problem if you really have such a clean facility and you don't have to remediate. How many people don't have to remediate? Like, is there a big percentage of people, or maybe we're not there yet as an industry? How do you see that?
What we're working hard to do is change public perception about that, because right or wrong, in the cannabis industry, weed that has been treated or remediated typically is going to sell for less. We believe that that is the wrong way to go about it, but it's the reality right now. And so growers who are using remediation technology, whether it be us or somebody else, often don't want to disclose that simply for financial reasons, right?
Oh, interesting.
So
Oh,
we're trying to promote and educate people on the ideas that, treated cannabis, clean cannabis is actually better for you, right? Who would want to take, who would want to get a mold spore in their lungs or whatever if they smoke something that's contaminated that way? And Joe mentioned medical patients can be extremely sensitive to that. We actually did a survey that was very interesting, the results. And people overwhelmingly, like 90% of people said that whether something was treated or not, they want to know. And they can make their own decision based on that. But also 90% of people said that medical cannabis should be treated. And the other interesting statistic from that survey was that 56% of people actually said they would be more likely to buy cannabis that's been remediated than something that has not. So they want to know whether it is or not, and they actually would be more likely to buy it, which goes against the idea that I just mentioned that treated cannabis sells for less in the marketplace.
yeah. So what's the biggest complaints from the naysayers? Like what are they like? Why don't they like it?
Joe, what are your thoughts on,
Well,
why
Like,
somebody
what
would
are you
not
hearing?
want
Like,
treated
well,
cannabis?
there's a couple things. I kind of wanted to touch on the growers. You've got my homies from back in the day, the tree hugger, naturalists. They want to be able to claim they're not using this technology, and I get it. That's their vibe. But when they're failing 10% of their crops to microbial stuff like that that could be treated, then they're losing money. So that's kind of your give and take on that. Now, also, if they're only growing 50 pounds a month, or something like that, then it probably doesn't make sense to have a machine like this. Some people in those cases actually send it out to other facilities to have it run. But this is going to be for like people who are growing 100 pounds plus per month to have
mm,
a unit like this in their facility. But I went through it. I was actually a rep for a flower brand here in Nevada, a very popular brand, and I found out our weed was getting treated with radiation, and I had this huge guilt complex that I'm selling people radioactive weed. I was smoking it all the time, so I'm thinking I'm smoking radioactive weed. I used to be afraid of microwaves and stuff like that, but
mhm.
once I understood the technology and everything, I realized that it's just, like an X-ray. It's going to go right through it. It gets absorbed into the lead walls of the machine, and nothing is, and we've actually made a video to kind of counteract that to show people that it's not radioactive. So that's one part of it. The other part is people say you can't keep your facility clean enough to pass. But when you're growing 200 pounds, you're harvesting 200 pounds a week. That's almost impossible to do with some of the regulations in different states. So
Oh, that's what you were saying earlier. Like some of the different regulations don't.
the limits are so low, you have to have all these precautions to be able to pass, and to be able to just run it through our unit and know that's going to be safe and clean for the consumer and be able to pass all your testing. It just everybody wins. So
Right, right.
yeah.
But so is it mostly used for outdoor grow? Is everybody using it indoor, greenhouse,
Well,
outdoor? I mean, I would imagine outdoor more.
yeah, outdoor definitely you have to. Basically, like I said, each state depending, right? Here in Nevada, we're at 10,000 CFU. Illinois, I think, is at 1,000 CFU. Some places are at 100,000. So maybe indoor could pass easier on 100,000, where outdoor is not going to be able to. They'll have to either send out to decontaminate or get an in-house type of device like ours for a kill step. So.
So what was that? You said CFU. What is the limitation you're talking about? CFU? Is that what you
I'll
said?
let
Yeah,
yeah.
it's CFU per gram, which stands for colony forming units per gram. So that's a way to measure the microbial load. They would literally take a sample and dilute it and then put it out on a petri dish and grow it. And those bacteria start to form colonies. And based on the amount of dilution and stuff that they can calculate, how many colony forming units per gram. And that's the way the regulations are set. In every example that I know of, CFU per gram is what they measure.
Okay.
And
And I have,
so just one other comment. In addition to that, so CFU per gram is typically on like total yeast and mold, like that's kind of the overall microbial count. But then there are specific kinds of microbes that are dangerous to people that various states have outlawed. Things like Aspergillus, E. coli, other examples like that. And for many states, though, that's zero tolerance. If you have any of that in your cannabis, it will fail, and you can't sell it.
what's the biggest culprit out there now that everybody's facing? Like what microbe, what
I
bad?
think Aspergillus is the one that gets the most airtime.
Yeah.
Aspergillus it's the same kind of stuff like you see sometimes, building up in the corner of your shower or your bathroom, that they call it black mold. It's that same thing. It's extremely common, right? It's in the air around you and me and everybody else all the
I was gonna say
time.
it's airborne, so it's almost, you have to have like
Yeah.
a Loctite, facility, and then people, you have HVACs, you have all these things going on, so it's really, really hard to be able to handle that. And
It is hard to keep it out.
yeah, and what I was gonna say, back in the day, you wanted to grow the biggest colas. You want to have a big football-sized cola. And now as a grower, you don't want that because you have more chance of mold and stuff, that grows inside of those colas. So you have to like really fine tune your cultivating to make sure that the bud size are not too big, but big enough. And, it's very technical and complicated. So.
Oh, that's interesting. Right. I never thought about that because people are always talking about growing big buds, but the bigger you go, the more moisture you could probably hold in there. And then I've also heard, yeah, so there's got to be a balance there, or your system has your environment, growing environment has to be perfect. But I have heard a couple other growers saying, like the different states, the whatever that limit is too high, it's not really dangerous, and then they're making them at this extra cost of doing remediation or whatever. I'm just saying, do you see something out there that the regulators in different states are kind of missing, or they're making
It's too strict or
too
something.
strict? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can only speak from my experience. What we see through most of the country is a level of 10,000 CFU per gram as a maximum level. Seems to be a good middle ground, right? My understanding, at least, that it does a good job of protecting patients, especially medical patients, from getting something that's contaminated that might harm them, and is also, a reasonable hurdle for the growers to be able to get under. 1,000 CFU per gram, like he mentioned in Illinois, I think is very tight. We talked to somebody out of Israel the other day, and I think the level there is 2,000 CFU per gram. So those are very strict.
Ooh, yeah.
I believe that 100,000 CFU per gram, which is also reasonably common, is a little too loose, and we're letting product through that could be harmful to people. And again, a healthy person smoking something that has 100,000 CFU per gram probably isn't going to do a lot to them. A sick person, it could. And just the other thing to realize that, if you compare food to cannabis, you put food in your stomach, and your stomach does a lot to, process that and kill anything that's bad on the food or whatever. If you eat some moldy cheese or something, your stomach's going to take care of that. But when you're putting it right into your lungs don't have the same capability to kill that stuff, and that's where it starts to be dangerous for your health.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say a healthy person smoking, they're probably gonna be smoking a lot, so it's a lot of 100,000 CFU
Right.
over and over and over, So.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I was gonna say, each state they either go off of their food regulations, or every state's their own island, right? So what they're basing their information off of, it's their own. So from state to state, it's so different, and it's until it gets federally legal, it's just kind of wild that way. So
Also, what I've seen is a lot of the outdoor flower actually goes towards processing and towards, gummies or other kinds of cannabis extracts. And so those processes of extracting from those buds kill a lot of the bad stuff anyway. And so you really don't need a machine like ours if you're going to process it. But if you're going to sell it as flower, that's where we come in and can make a difference.
yeah, and that's the only time as a naturalist that I believe that terpene should be reintroduced, is when it's been distilled, and then you want to add flavor back into it, not flour, unless you're trying to make a grape flavored something or whatever flour. So
Right.
yeah.
But you're saying that you really don't really kill off the terpenes? That seems hard to believe. I mean, only because I don't know. I haven't compared to other remediation systems, but just knowing how volatile they are.
Then you have cannabis terpenes and botanical terpenes. You got food grade terpenes. You got all these, different terpenes. And cannabis terpenes are going to be the most expensive. But yeah, those are the only that I'd prefer to have in my whatever products I'm enjoying.
I feel like eventually, especially if we go legal, national, that it will start becoming more of a medical market where, it's required to have GMP facilities and clean product, to go to market. Because there's studies out there, there's so much dirty product going into market, but that also has to do with poor storage after, you guys clean it up and it's perfect, but then there's no system after that really, to keep it properly stored in the environment it needs to be in.
Well, with ours, you could just, here we use turkey bags. They're sealed. You put it in the machine. It's clean. As long as you keep it in that turkey bag, you're good. So, and we're doing a stability testing right now to show how that looks after 6 months after it's run through our machine, how it looks after 12 months compared to not being run at all. And we should have that data by MJ BizCon, so I'm pretty stoked for that as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, that would be interesting. But if that turkey bag was sitting in a hot truck somewhere,
Well, yeah, then
that's what I'm talking about.
That's
Yeah.
a problem. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's that we don't, the industry is lacking in that last mile, keeping things preserved after it's been properly, stored. But the shelf stability, so how does that hold shelf? What are you putting in there that holds the shelf stability? What?
Well, you figure, let's say it's a 10,000 CFU limit, you pass at 8,000 CFU, yay, right? You put it in a jar, you put it in a Mylar bag, now it's sitting on a shelf at a dispensary for 3 months, 5 months, 6 months. What's going on in that jar? What's happening in there, right? So that's what we want to see, is what's happening with that jar versus a jar that's been run with our decontamination, got down to 0 CFU, and what does that look like after 6 months compared to the one? So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's cool. Oh, that'll be interesting to see. That's really good information to know. I mean, it's all in the data. Anyway, I feel like this was great, like just a great overview of the whole technology. Do you think I've missed any questions that we should include in here?
I wanted to just comment on something. You talked about, why X-ray may not affect terpenes as much as other technologies. I want to just for 1 minute get a little bit scientific about how X-ray works and how does it kill microbes and how it's different from other technologies. So one interesting thing about X-ray is the size or the wavelength of an X-ray is almost exactly the same size as the DNA strand in a microbe. And so it's almost perfectly tuned as it's passing through the flower. What happens is those DNA strands actually absorb energy from the X-ray. And when it absorbs energy, it breaks those DNA strands apart, basically killing the microbe when it does that. And it's not performing a chemical reaction with the plant. It is literally targeting the DNA strands of those microbes. And so a simple example that I like to use that just tried to help people visualize what this looks like. If you were to just scaling, if you were to say that one mold spore was the size of a golf ball, then inside that mold spore is some DNA strands. They're approximately the size of a needle, and an X-ray on that scale is the same size. So those needles are coming through, they're going through that golf ball, and they're targeting the DNA strands. On that same scale, one single plant cell is about 15 feet in diameter. And think there are, billions of those plant cells in every plant. And so these X-rays are tiny. So they're passing through the plant pretty much untouched, not affecting anything. They're targeting only the things that are on the size scale that they are. And so that makes it particularly good at killing microbes and leaving the rest of the stuff alone.
Oh, so it works on size. That's how, because I was wondering how it could go through the plant and not, alter it in any way, but it's based on size. Ah, that's so interesting.
So, on the other hand, say a chemical treatment, even a fog type chemical treatment, those are molecule sized, that are reacting with terpene molecules and other things that are similar size, on the plant, and that's where some degradation can happen that way.
And basically, the other kind of stigma is this machine safe to be around, stuff like that. And we're at the highest FDA regulated standards and all that. There's no, we come and test the machine, show there's nothing leaking out of it. You don't have to wear a badge around it. It doesn't have to be in a special room, anything like that. If everything goes federally legal tomorrow, we're at all the highest standards, so nothing would have to change on our unit. And so it's very safe, it's very simple, it's very efficient, and it's an excellent machine. So.
And I guess, right. And I guess the biggest complaints out there would be, people just don't want to add one more expense to their production. I mean, it must be so hard but I don't know. This is a technology. If you have dirty weed, you have dirty weed. You know what I mean? I don't know. Or else you're going to try to pass it off, but not in the legal market as much as,
Yeah.
as you
I
can.
mean, that definitely is a factor. And I will say that X-ray technology in general is a little more expensive than other kinds of technology. When you look at the numbers, I mean, the payback on an X-ray machine can happen very fast, because your losses, cannabis is a valuable product. Your losses can really pile up fast. But that is one of the things, other kinds of technology can do the job less expensively. We don't believe they're as effective, but again, everybody's got to make their own choice in their own business between what they're willing to spend and what they get back for that amount of spend. And X-ray delivers the very best decontamination process. It also is probably the most expensive. So there is that part of the equation.
Wow, that's tough. Yeah, in this industry, because just
What we do to try to help that is, we have a leasing program, and so we're willing to lease our machines, typically a 3-year or a 4-year lease, and so we can give somebody a reasonable monthly payment that covers the lease of the machine and all of the maintenance and everything to keep it going, and so they don't have to come up with that big nugget of money all at once or do financing or something like that. We can handle that with them. And so that really lowers the bar for a lot of companies to get in. Joe mentioned small growers earlier. We would say somebody that's growing somewhere between 300 to 400 pounds a month, that the finances would work out to where our machine would be beneficial to their operation. They would actually be making money by having one of our machines in there. Somebody that's growing less than that amount, it's a little bit more of a consideration. And Joe mentioned that there are people that have set up doing decontamination as a service. They call it toll processing. And so if you are one of those smaller growers, then you can take your product to a toll processor, let them run it for you. The other thing that we're working on and just about ready to launch is a mobile system. meaning that we have taken one of our machines, mounted it inside of a mobile trailer, and we can drive right up to your farm and park it there for a couple of days, run all your product through for, you know, a per pound kind of price. And then we'll drive off to the next farm and the next one and the next one. And that's a way for somebody small to be able to get this high level technology and just do it as to what they need, not having a, you know, a recurring monthly obligation for it.
So basically the main argument for your product versus someone else's product because of price, you know, why they would want to pay more is, would you say that it's because it's keeping the plant more intact, which would make
Yeah.
it more potent, more entourage effect? Like that's really the key, right? And I mean,
Yes.
the problem is like you said, everybody has to figure out where they want to invest in for the end game, because if you have customers coming back, you know, repeat customers because they get a good feeling from your product, there's a lot of these different components that go into that. And again, I'm talking about this whole preservation thing and packaging preservation to retail preservation, you know, because it's, that's the other part of it too. It's not one responsibility. There's a lot
Sure.
to make it to the end and to give that customer. It's challenging out there.
We are just one piece of the puzzle. You're exactly right, but hopefully a helpful piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. I feel like the medical market, I think once we go medical, there's a lot of talk out there about pushing standards, or maybe it's just in my world, but, you know, just starting to really get the industry behind implementing standards and clean cannabis, equals quality cannabis and all that. So it's all in the same vein of where I think the industry is going right now.
Agreed.
So, yeah.
And the ASTM groups are doing a lot of great work towards standardization. You know, again, they can't affect the laws in each state, but what they can come up with is best practices and document that. And I do think that, as you know, if and when we are legal nationwide, that those ASTM standards will be a big part of a basis for writing, you know, federal standards or whatever for cannabis.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. And that's why I can't wait till that happens. And we need that.
Great.
This
We
country
agree.
really needs it, honestly. It's
Yeah.
getting out of control. But I think we're on that track right now. So I know I'm pushing for that. This was a really great conversation.
Well, we enjoyed talking to you, Pam. Thank you for inviting us.